Canada's west coast features quite a unique rainforest, one whose biodiversity has always fascinated ecologists: the Pacific temperate rainforest. The humid Pacific winds unleash a phenomenal amount of rain on the west coast, up to 5 meters per year. Indeed, it's the wettest region in North America. Water gushes everywhere, creating roaring waterfalls and powerful rivers before flowing into the Pacific Ocean. Water provides life along the way, and in certain places, the forest is sometimes akin to paradise.
You're doing great, man.
You think?
Damien and Francois Xavier are seasoned explorers. The combination of their expertise makes for a fearsome team, which offers a new perspective on Canada's natural history. Their goal is to explore the most remote and inaccessible recesses of British Columbia in order to better understand the natural laws that govern them. Today, the two men are flying due north in their ultralight airplane. It's the first day of their great adventure, during which they'll explore Canada's unique West Coast ecosystem, the Pacific temperate rainforest. The rainforest stretches for over 2,000 kilometers along the North American West Coast, from the steppes of California to the boreal forest, and east to west from the coastal mountain range to the Pacific Ocean.
What a gorgeous river. Did you see the color of that water?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So, if I'm not mistaken, this river should lead us directly to the sea.
We're almost there.
The secret behind this ecosystem is its special bond with the ocean. In many places along this stretch, land and sea are so intertwined that it's hard to tell them apart. Indeed, the fates of these two seemingly very different environments are closely bound by a 1,000-year-old cycle of organic matter, a constant flux of nutrients between the ocean and the forest.
Did you see the size of those trees?
What a great spot.
Our adventurers will start their expedition with the seabed. Then they'll travel upriver to observe the mass migrations of salmon, a key species for the survival of this ecosystem. Along the way, they'll discover the fascinating world of the coastal grizzly bear. And finally, our two explorers will get to climb a 1,000-year-old tree in the heart of the forest.
Oh, that's the ocean coming up.
Okay, I see him.
Francois Xavier is meeting up with Tavish Campbell, an expert on the region's marine ecosystem. Together, they'll explore the waters of the Johnston Strait, smack dab in the middle of the rainforest. A spot Captain Cousteau once described as being one of the most diverse he'd ever explored.
And there's the beach. That should be doable, right? I think it's big enough?
Yeah, it should work.
Meanwhile, Damien will continue on northwards. His destination, a magical place that the locals call the Great Bear Rainforest.
Easy now.
Too much speed, I need to slow down.
Take your time. You got this. Yes! Nice! Nice!
Oh, yeah!
Whoa, perfect landing.
And a beach landing. Woo!
Fantastic. What a smooth landing.
Have fun, man.
Hi there. How's it going?
Good. You made it.
Yeah, I did. Whoa.
Perfect.
Good.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. How was your flight?
It was pretty good, yeah. Beautiful. Really beautiful. Yeah. How are the conditions for diving?
Good. Yeah, they're looking really nice. Yeah, it's great having it calm and
The light is amazing.
oh, this light coming down is going to be awesome. And it's looking pretty clear too. So
Yeah, I noticed. So where are we going exactly?
well, we're just going to go down. It's actually not too far from here, just down around the corner.
Yeah.
It's a nice point that sticks out into the channel. You can see we have quite a bit of current here still, but it's slackening off and it's going to be slack tide and pretty shortly here.
So how come you know so much about this environment?
I've always been interested in it, and me and my sister started diving from a pretty young age, and it's just, you know, it's been our front yard. It's been our front yard and our backyard for our whole lives.
Yeah, it seems like you spend a lot of energy trying to protect this as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that comes naturally to anyone who spends a lot of time in a certain area.
Yeah.
You know, is once you grow to know it and grow to love it, then you want to protect it. And for so long, you know, we dove around here, but it was only us that were able to see the life down there and the colors, and we'd come up just ecstatic about these dives, just, you know, bubbling over with all this enthusiasm and excitement. So now to be able to go down and, you know, have cameras down with us and bring some of this imagery back up to the surface is pretty exciting for us.
The two men jump into the water equipped with oxygen masks and a radio system that will allow them to communicate during the dive.
So we're starting our adventure in the depth of the Johnstone Strait.
Que nous commençons cette aventure. Ça peut paraître étonnant à première vue de commencer.
It may seem odd to begin exploring a forest by way of the seabed, but we'll soon see that part of the source of the abundance of the forest
L'océan que repose
lies under the surface of the ocean.
l'abondance des forêts terrestres. Ces deux écosystèmes
These two ecosystems, the marine and the rainforest ecosystems, form an indivisible whole.
indissociables.
And between these two ecosystems, there's what's known as a keystone species. A keystone species is so crucial to its specific environment that the latter couldn't survive without the former. In this specific case, salmon is the keystone species. We'll see that Pacific salmon spend one part of their lives in the ocean and the other one in the terrestrial river system. And it's precisely this journey from ocean to forest that we'll try to follow. And Pacific salmon will act as our guides for the duration of this program.
So you can see as we move along the cliff here, we're starting to see some plumose anemones. These large white things looking like cauliflowers. And they're a filter feeder, just like these tube worms. See these big fields of tube worms?
There's just so much life clinging on to these rocks.
These currents that we're feeling here are the exact reason there's so much life along this cliff. All these colorful species we're seeing along here, the majority of them are filter feeders. So when you're a filter feeder and you rely on the feed to come to you, it makes a lot of sense to be situated where the current is flowing past you, bringing lots and lots of food every day.
Tavish and Francois Xavier are swimming in a soup of plankton. It's the main source of life on this reef. Plankton is composed of tiny plant or animal organisms that drift along the currents of the planet's vast oceans. Plankton is crucial to the ocean's food chain. However, as it needs sunlight to survive, it can grow only in the first 40 meters below the surface of the water. This is known as the photic zone. The vast majority of marine species live in this zone. However, plankton eventually dies off and sinks to the bottom, thus continuously depriving marine life of sustenance-providing nutrients. What allows this ecosystem to maintain its balance are what are known as upwelling waters. Upwelling waters are strong marine currents that well up from the depths, carrying along with them the nutrients that have collected on the seabed and propelling them towards the surface. It's this constant mixing of the ocean waters that allows this part of the world to be so full of life. Tavish and Francois Xavier have reached the end of the photic zone. But instead of plunging deeper in the depths, they prefer to head towards another kind of aquatic paradise.
Cet endroit est tout à fait
This place
extraordinaire.
is really incredible.
J'ai l'impression que nous pénétrons dans une
It's like entering a sort of seaweed forest.
fête d'algues.
So this is a beautiful example of a bull kelp forest. Look at this towering three-dimensional structure that it gives the ocean. The kelp forests play an incredibly important role, providing habitat for a number of different species in the ocean. All the way from the largest fish down to the smallest little invertebrates, including young rockfish and salmon. So this bull kelp is actually an annual species, and it's some of the fastest growing seaweed in the world, sometimes growing up to 2 feet per day. So over the course of the season, this kelp will grow up to sometimes 20 meters in length, providing incredible structure in the ocean. So you can see here we've come across a little bit of an urchin barren. But you can see after the sea urchins have moved through, all you're left with on the bottom is some encrusting coral and algae, and all the seaweed has been eaten off the bottom. So if we turn this sea urchin over, we can actually see its mouth part here. So right in there you can actually see it's eating 2 pieces of kelp right there. It's eating 2 fronds of bull kelp. Right underneath. So we've caught him red-handed. So historically, when we had sea otters on the coast, the sea otters would prey upon the urchins and keep the urchin populations in control. And when the sea otter was hunted to extinction on this coast for its furs, then the sea urchins didn't have their natural predators. So the sea urchin populations exploded, and subsequently they ate down all the kelp. And the kelp forests like this are very rare to find nowadays, because the sea urchin populations are so large.
In 1968, the government of British Columbia reintroduced sea otters on part of the coast, and the results were almost immediate. In the most repopulated areas, the kelp forests and all of their inhabitants have made a huge comeback. Everything is interconnected here, like links in a chain. Break one link, and the whole chain comes apart. Summer on the west coast is coming to an end, and under the leaves of the trees of the rainforest, an amazing story is unfolding, that of a crucial 1,000-year-old exchange between the ocean and the forest. It's a story of life and death, of a great destiny, and of an epic journey. It's the story of salmon. In the icy waters of a mountain river, Pacific salmon have reached the end of their journey. Their ancestors started coming here over 6 million years ago. They've been coming to this coast since the start of the last ice age, and certainly well before the first humans ever set foot here. Each summer, hundreds of millions of salmon undertake one of the world's most amazing migrations. From the depths of the Pacific Ocean, they swim thousands of kilometers upriver, as far as the deep forest, in order to reproduce at the exact spot where they were born. Their journey literally defines the fate of the West Coast. They are the most important link between the ocean and the forest. Upon contact with the fresh water, the salmon stop feeding and begin an impressive mutation. At the end of their journey, they start to decompose and embark on the last but most important days of their lives. In the darkness of the undergrowth, they're all searching for the ideal spot to deposit their offspring. A gravel bed, neither too small nor too big. A slight current for the oxygen, but not too strong. The female then digs a nest with her tail and delicately deposits her eggs. The male then adds his sperm. After that, the couple need only to protect their treasure while awaiting their own demise. A 100 years of human development have nonetheless greatly altered this epic journey. To maintain plummeting salmon stocks, mankind has come up with a simple and efficient solution. Today in British Columbia, over 10% of the salmon that swim upriver will arrive at vastly different spawning grounds. In the hatchery that substitutes for their gravel beds, salmon are collected and then sorted according to species. The females are stripped of their eggs and the males of their sperm. Then eggs and sperm are mixed together and placed in an incubator. A few months later, a much greater number of young salmon than nature is able to produce is released into the river. Because this allows mankind to maintain not only salmon stocks, but also industrial fishing, hatcheries have become a necessary evil. However, on the coast, certain people have a different take on things.
Like when they're all lined up like that, you can just count them one at a time. All right, Rob, I'm gonna work back to you now so we can kind of count these together. I'm Will Atlas. I work for Cucks Project Society as Salmon Program Coordinator based in Bella Bella. Well, Cucks is a community organization in Bella Bella that has almost a 10-year track record of running science programs that support Healthsick-led stewardship of resources that are important to the Healthsick First Nation.
The Healthsick we're a band of First Nations people have inhabited this place for over 13,000 years and have depended pretty heavily on all of our resources for sustenance and survival. Probably about 4,000 band members, one of the bigger reserves and tribes on the central coast of British Columbia. We're salmon-driven people. Everything that we depend on is also dependent on salmon.
NS stands for natural senescent, basically fish that died naturally after spawning. BK is bear kill, wolf kill. We talk a lot about the sort of salmon crisis or the challenges facing salmon in some ways, and I think that to a certain degree that's true, particularly in places where urbanization agriculture, forestry, other land use change has essentially fundamentally altered their habitats.
10 NS chums and 3 NS pinks. 2 bear-kill chum and a bear-kill pink.
But still, I mean, in the Central Coast region, we have very intact, healthy habitats. And if you think about intact habitat as the principal in your bank account, we have a very full bank account here. So salmon are well equipped to weather the potential, impacts of the coming century if we can protect habitat or continue to protect habitat here, and also make sure that we're not over-harvesting these populations moving forward.
6 NS pinks.
We get an estimate of the total population using mark-recite techniques, where we walk the spawning creeks in the fall and recite both tagged and untagged fish. And from the ratio of tagged and untagged fish, we're able to expand that to an estimate of the total population size. It can be, challenging. It's a long season. We start in mid-April with the smolt trap, and we go till the end of July. But overall, I mean, it's a very rewarding work, and the guys that we get to work with are, really great. And so there's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of jokes, and it's a pretty excellent lifestyle, actually. I mean, it's such a small distance, but I'm curious to see whether there's any sort of asynchrony in, some years you have more fish spawning down here than up there, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. We run fish weir, where we capture a large number of the sockeye that are migrating upstream to spawn. So a fish weir is basically a picket fence in a river, and it's designed to sort of channel fish into a certain area. We live on the river, and we monitor the weir, we maintain the weir every day, throughout the day, and we tag the fish with individually visible tags. That allows us to look at migration rates through the lower river, because we actually conduct snorkel counts twice a week from the lake down to the weir. I mean, there's evidence of weirs going back 5,000 or 6,000 years on the BC and Alaska coast, so that's an ancient technology.
There was lots of stories about, the creeks being so full of salmon that you could run across and not get your feet wet. What we're doing is fighting back, looking at a more in-depth approach to salmon populations through projects like the Quay Weir, so that we can, say, X amount of sockeye are in the river, so, you can go ahead and fish. Or it's a dry season, no more fishing until the sockeye can get in the river.
Just pulling out the otoliths, which is the ear bone. And the otolith, like a ring of a tree, records growth rings for every year of the fish's life, but you can tell the years by a tightening of the rings, which is indicative of slower growth during winter. So these otoliths will basically tell us how long each of these fish spent at sea before returning. And so when they were spawned in the gravel here at Quay. Salmon have always been, a resource that is fundamentally, when best managed at a local scale. And so I think the people that live, in and around the watersheds where salmon return ought to be the ones that principally harvest them and manage them. They also have, you might say, more skin in the game. They have more at stake.
Well, the future is now. If we don't stand up for these sockeye populations, for these grizzly bears, for these trees, for all of these resources in the land and sea that don't have a voice, then none of our children to come are going to have the opportunity to live the life that we're living right now.
Spring has arrived on Kauai River, and life comes into its own again. From the icy waters that have seen their parents' demise, young salmon emerge. These in turn will soon let themselves be carried off by the current towards the Pacific waters, so that they too can fulfill their great destiny. Damien is now in the Great Bear Rainforest, along with bear expert Tim Irvin, where they'll try to observe grizzly bears. Because they eat so much salmon, grizzly bears are actually key players when it comes to the flow of nutrients from sea to forest. This beaver hydroplane will transport the camera crew and all their equipment to a floating lodge in the heart of the Smith Estuary, in the middle of grizzly bear country.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing boats, eh?
Yeah.
What I love about being here is all like the, all this mist and everything in the trees, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
amazing.
it's just so, it's so beautiful and has a real ethereal feel to it.
Why is it such a special place for the bears there?
Well, I think that the first part is that this is the biggest piece of temperate rainforest left in the world. Here in the Great Bear Rainforest, it's the largest intact piece. And so just on that note alone, because there's a big intact wilderness here, it means there's a lot of good habitat for bears. It's not interrupted by human activities in the way that it is in many other parts of the world. And the other thing about this environment that makes it really great for bears and supports a lot of bears is that it's a really productive environment. We have the ocean and the forest, and they mingle together, so it becomes a very rich environment with a lot of nutrient sharing between the ocean and the forest. And there's a lot of food, so it can support a lot more bears than some more sparse environments. But then in the fall, when you get that concentrated food source in the form of salmon in the river valley, we could have as many as between 40 and 60 bears using this river valley.
That's impressive.
So we'll get out here and we'll head upstream so where you can get a better chance to see salmon spawning in the shallow water where bears can get access to it.
Okay.
We're getting up towards where the fish are spawning,
Okay.
where the bears are actively hunting the salmon. So we have to be really careful because we could bump into a bear literally at any moment here. Hey, bear.
It is pretty dense here, yeah?
It's really dense. The sight lines aren't very good, so you hear me yelling, hey, bear, every now and then.
Okay.
That's so we don't startle a bear. The worst thing you want to do is startle a bear because you force it to make a fast decision, and if it chooses to defend itself, it's very dangerous for us. You smell that?
Mm-hmm. It smells a bit rotten, eh?
It smells something stinky. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've got something up here. Hey, bear.
Oh yeah, it smells pretty strong.
Wow, yeah. Check this out.
Some leftovers?
Yeah, we're hot on the trail now. What do you think we've got here?
Some salmon, eh?
Yeah, so this looks like this is what's left of a chum salmon. You can actually see the jaws here. You can see these big teeth.
Yeah.
Chum salmon get these really enlarged teeth during spawning that they use to attract females and fight off other males. Definitely not much left of this guy. But you can see those giant teeth that are very typical of a spawning chum salmon, especially a male. They get really enlarged. In some ways, it's kind of like, you think of like the really large antlers on a moose,
Really
which seems to be part of the sexual selection of these species. Yeah, they're really impressive.
What happens to what's left of all this?
If we came back in a few days, this would be covered in maggots, and you come back a few days later and just be stripped clean, just be a perfect skeleton. But what happens is the bear's going to wander off, and the bear's going to urinate and defecate in the forest, and it's going to take all the nutrients from this fish and spread it around the forest as it does that. In the meantime, the nutrients from this carcass are going to melt into the forest and be absorbed by the roots. So these salmon are born here in these rivers in the forest. They go out to the ocean, and they absorb all these nutrients from the ocean. They come back up here, and they die, and the bears and the wolves and these nutrients get absorbed. So what's really amazing is when you look at the cross sections of these trees, what you'll find is that the really big salmon runs correspond exactly with the large growth rings in the trees. What happens is the trees sort of nurture the river, keep the water temperature low by shading it, reducing erosion, provides this great nursery for the fish, and in turn the fish come back and fertilize the trees. It's an amazing cycle that keeps this forest going. Yeah, it really is. It really is. Come here, Damien, come here.
Oh wow.
There's mother and two cubs over there.
Right there,
You
yeah.
see them through the woods?
Yeah.
Wow, she's a beautiful bear.
So big.
Yeah, she's a healthy bear.
Oh, and you can see the salmons jumping around.
Yeah, so you can see what I mean? See how the shallow water over there?
Yeah.
You can actually see the tails of the salmon out of the water. Wow. Yeah, those cubs are pretty healthy looking here. Take a look. This is a great place for those bears and good place for us.
Definitely.
Nice.
Nice found, really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you can see that big muscle on her shoulder there.
Uh-huh.
That's a really nice way to tell a black bear from a grizzly bear, because grizzlies have that big hump on their shoulders, big digging muscles. Oh, there she goes, there she goes.
Oh, it's chasing
Did
you.
you get it? No. Sometimes people make it sound like it's easy for them, and it's not. You know, they miss more than they succeed. We've already seen her miss a couple times here already, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, the cubs, they're learning here. Like, you can see them taking a few runs at the fish, but at this age, their success rate at catching their own fish is probably pretty poor. Most of the time, she'll catch a fish, she'll start eating it, and the cubs will walk over and start chewing on it, and eventually she'll walk away and let them have it. Oh, look, he's got one there. You see the tail?
Oh, I'm bringing it back.
Yeah.
Pretty good lifestyle.
So this is kind of exactly what we talked about. You saw that bear go into the woods there.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking that fish into the woods, it's going to consume it in the woods, it's going to leave the carcass in there. So what you find is bears are an amazing nutrient transport system because they take a lot of fish and they actually move them into the river.
The bears barely notice the presence of Damien and Tim. They're far too busy fishing for dinner. After all, there's not that much time left to fatten up before salmon stocks dry up and winter sets in. By next month, these bears will eat up to 40 kilograms of fish and gain almost a kilogram a day. In general, these young grizzlies use techniques they've picked up from their mothers with varying degrees of success. But practice makes perfect. If fishing sometimes goes unrewarded, at least these bears still know how to have some fun. If these cubs manage to eat their fill, they'll grow up to weigh almost 400 kilograms of muscle and fur. They'll then be able to teach, in turn, the subtle art of fishing to their offspring, thereby ensuring the survival of their species. Being born, growing up, reproducing and dying, and then relinquishing our flesh to nourish the environment that sustained us. Such is the universal and eternal cycle of life. Imagine a place where that cycle occurs away from prying eyes. A place forgotten by the rest of the world, where wild nature still reigns supreme over all living things. A benevolent ruler whose laws dictate when the sun will rise and when it will set. Imagine a place where time is marked by the rhythm of the waves, by the beating of the wings of birds, or the blows of whales. That place actually exists, here in the Great Bear Rainforest. For thousands of years, life has been perpetuating itself, unbeknownst to the rest of the world. The virginal purity of this secret garden is like a haven of simplicity in a forever changing world. Between two clouds, you can sometimes spot some human or other come to cast a light on this Eden amidst the world of men.
You know, when we first came up here, it was known as the Mid-Coast Timber Supply Area.
It was really just seen as a place to extract raw resources. And there was no other non-government organization working on conservation issues here. It was wide open. And this is a coastline that I've been exploring for 20 plus years, and I realized that I would have to live many more lifetimes to fully see it all. It's that large of a wilderness area. It's special on so many levels. Globally, there's just few coastlines that are associated with a huge island archipelago, such as we have here, that support many globally rare species. Our work is primarily wildlife conservation. It's really important to build public support for protecting such a large area. So we get involved in public education projects such as films and books and popular magazine articles, that sort of thing. So, film work and photography and really, visual storytelling.
Yeah, they could be around the corner, or sometimes when the tide drops, they can access fish down lower. They're not far.
This is interesting.
Oh, wow.
You can see this is all from wolves lying down, pups playing. See how it's all kind of over there. But this is black bear here, which is very interesting. One less black bear. They don't really like bears in their fishing spots. They claim certain areas where they fish, and if a bear comes in, they'll often attack it. Goal today is to document fishing behavior, which is quite an important part of our work, trying to understand the importance of salmon to numerous species, but wolves in particular.
That is a high definition PTZ camera, which the camera can, it's like you're standing here and you're looking around, you can zoom all over the estuary. So that information is being transmitted back to our lab, where we're streaming it online and recording it in high quality as well. And we're watching it there, and we're kind of putting that out to the world so people can kind of connect with this area and what's happening at this time of year.
We're just sitting at 6.5 and 6.5 now, so maybe where it was.
I put it back to where it was there.
Okay, I'll just give it a second, see what happens here.
If this thing loads, you can see actually what it looks like when we're controlling the camera. It's going pretty slow right now, so I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. A lot of wolves, especially in this area, are kind of what we're mainly looking for, but you'll find just incredible bird life through here. Lots of eagles hanging out often, a whole bunch of ravens. Sometimes we get some bears and things like that too, and just being able to watch the salmon kind of move through this river too is pretty phenomenal. So it's pretty useful for us for monitoring wildlife. It's good enough that we can get a really good understanding of what the animals are doing in the area. Yeah, that's happening right now. So there's a salmon right there, swimming around. You can see them there. There's a couple of them. It's something you don't necessarily come across every day in your life, to be able to interact with animals in kind of their environment in that way. So it's another nice thing I like about this job.
By photographing and filming, documenting these animals and this place, we're able to essentially make people aware of its existence, and secondly, make them fall in love with it, and thirdly, want to do everything they can to protect it. So I think it's an extremely powerful way to bring people in. I mean, can you imagine if the entire world was was a concrete jungle, and we seem to have forgotten that we're from places like these, and this is where we used to live, and we used to live by catching fish and off of these resources. So there's this disconnect with nature, but we need this habitat as much as the animals do. Just because we don't rely on it anymore doesn't mean it isn't essential for our existence.
Damien and Francois Xavier have met up in Carmanah-Walbrand Forest, west of Vancouver Island. This old-growth forest represents the last stage of the Pacific salmon cycle. In this rainforest, reminiscent of the Amazon jungle, roads are rare and bridges even rarer. However, the team is getting help from a couple of first-rate guides. Andy McKinnon is a renowned Canadian botanist. Matthew Beattie is an arborist, specializing in climbing giant trees. Together, they'll try to climb one of the oldest trees in the area in order to explore its canopy.
Lashing rain for 3 days straight. Just today, we must have gotten at least 60 millimeters of rain, if not more.
Oh, it's a beautiful rainforest rain, Francois. And this is in the summertime. This is what it's like when it's dry in the rainforest.
We should come back have a look when it's humid. How high do the trees come up to here?
Oh, we're gonna see a couple above 200 feet for sure.
200, okay. How do you get the first rope up the tree?
We're gonna be using this big shot. It's a tool we use in the industry for installing pilot lines. And
whoa, look at this tree.
oh wow, that could be the one, Damien.
That might be the one. Yeah.
Wow, look at the life up there.
Yeah, it's so massive.
Now that's a magnificent tree. A western red cedar, perhaps 800 to 900 years old at a minimum.
Lots of little moss beds around too.
Yeah, there's lots of life up in that canopy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's got everything we're looking for.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
Perfect.
While Damien and Matthew get ready to climb the tree, Andy and Francois Xavier will continue exploring the rainforest.
For me, the most impressive thing about this forest is its size. The sheer size of these giant trees as we make our way through the forest.
Andy, I think like the most impressive about this forest is its size, right? How come the trees are so big?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is that here on the west coast, they can grow practically year-round if the temperature doesn't get too cold.
Right.
So they're evergreen trees, so they get plenty of moisture for growth. The tropical rainforests have similar amounts of total annual rainfall, but in terms of biomass, there are no ecosystems on Earth that come close to these coastal temperate rainforests.
Oh, really? We see a lot of young trees, but also very old trees.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's one of the characteristics of old-growth forests that sets them aside from the managed second-growth forests. The old-growth forests have a relatively small number of stems per hectare, usually, but they come in all sizes and ages, and some are alive and some are dead. And so they provide habitat for a wide range of different organisms. So if you go to a forest that has been cut down and replanted or regenerated naturally, what you generally find is a forest very simplified structurally and very simplified biologically compared to the richness that we see in an old-growth forest.
What's going on, Matt?
Meantime, Damien and Matt have come up against a huge setback. The part of the tree where Matt started climbing turned out to be dead. It just emitted a loud crack under the climber's weight.
So it looks like the tree's a bit unstable?
Well, yeah, I mean, we definitely knew that, but oh, yeah, it went all the way up too. Remember I was saying how some trees just give you that impression that they don't want to be climbed. I think we're making a good call by considering another specimen somewhere. So you all heard it though? It wasn't just me?
No, I didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
I think
you guys. Yeah, we've got other options.
And what I find fascinating in these forests is the relationships between all these different species.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they're certainly all connected in the forests here. You can talk about these sorts of relationships, these connections above ground. Some of the more interesting connections, I think, are below ground. All of the plants that we see in the forest here, about 94% of plants on Earth, have fungi associated with their roots. And these fungi, their little filaments, go through the soil, and they gather water and minerals for the plants. And the plants photosynthesize, make sugars, and send the sugars down to their roots to help feed the fungi. Trying to find some roots that might have some indication of it here. So if you look at the tips of the roots here, you'll see that the very tips of the roots there are white. You see that?
Yeah.
And that is the fungi wrapped around the root tips. And from there, the microscopic threads would spread through the soil, gather water and minerals, and bring them back to the plant root, because availability of nitrogen is the thing that's limiting growth in these forests. So to the extent that these fungi can help gather nitrogen and make it available to the plants, then the plants will grow more quickly. So there aren't really that many sources of nitrogen for the forests here. But if you're near a river like this in the coastal temperate rainforest, probably your major source of nitrogen for tree growth is salmon. The tree that we are going to climb, there will be nitrogen from the salmon in that tree.
From the ocean to the river, and from the river to the very tops of the trees of the forest, the salmon have finally reached the end of their long journey. Through their incredible destiny, they've created a crucial link between the ocean and the 1,000-year-old trees of the forest. Our two friends have made their way through this lost world, the mysterious canopy of the rainforest. These tall and well-rooted trees literally act as the spinal columns of the world. Their leaves collect energy from the sun to the great benefit of all earthly creatures, all the while releasing torrents of water into the atmosphere. Their branches and trunks harbor a host of animals, insects, and plants. The trees of this forest are among the oldest creatures on the planet. Their lives go back far longer than ours, and far longer than our human experience and collective memory. Trees are remarkable beings.
Damien, wait till you see this moss mat here, brother. Beautiful.
Can't wait. It's massive.
Yeah, check this out. Come up a bit. It's a couple feet thick. Like the soil accumulation is just incredible.
Oh, wow.
It's actually quite an impressive size huckleberry growing out of it too. It's been there for a while. It's brilliant.
So there's quite a few different species growing on this tree already.
Yeah, that's right. It's really metaphoric of an apartment complex of all sorts of species. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And there's that interconnectedness, that interdependency of old-growth forests where, you know, the network of species really rely upon one another. And so you take an important link out and it'll potentially disrupt the rest of the functions of the ecosystem.
The tree that Damien and Matt are exploring is over 1,000 years old. 1,000 years ago, the Inca civilization hadn't yet arisen, and Constantinople had yet to fall. When Christopher Columbus set foot on American soil, this tree was already a nearly 500-year-old giant. These great trees are guardians of time. They've seen civilizations come and go. They've seen men being born only to die soon afterwards. The rainforest, like the rest of nature, imposes humility and respect on the human race. But as Matthew Beattie put it, the mighty forest must also grapple with immense vulnerability, like a giant with brittle bones, and mankind has the power to either destroy it or protect it. We call it Earth, but our planet is composed mostly of water, from oceans to clouds, clouds to rain, and rain to streams and rivers. In liquid, solid, or gaseous form, water in its infinite cycle drives our planet. But there's a place in Canada where the great saga of water has shaped nature like nowhere else. Welcome to the sacred headwaters. The Uncharted Canada team set out to discover an element that is so abundant and yet so enigmatic: water. While following the fantastic voyage of water on Earth, Francois Xavier and Damien will try to uncover its mystery, its importance, but also its fragility. An ambitious plan for the team, who began their trek where water begins its journey on Earth, at the headwaters. To trace the origins of water in northwestern BC, we have no choice but to go to the sacred headwaters, the source of the water. Water that falls from the sky onto this small parcel of land gives rise to three gigantic rivers: the Nass, the Skeena, and the Stikine. Together, these rivers drain such a vast surface that some claim you could hide England in it, and the English would never find it.
I'll take over whenever you want.
All right, go ahead.
Good. I have control.
We're headed for the sacred headwaters. We're now flying up the Clapan Valley. We're hoping to find a bush runway to land on. I'll drop off our friend FX there, where he's meeting with the hydrologist Daniel Nadeau. And apparently he brought a canoe.
Absolutely. He's brought canoes, so we can begin our adventure on the water.
I'll follow you from up here and we'll meet at the Grand Canyon.
Sounds good. The goal of this journey is to follow the Stikine River from its source in the middle of the sacred headwaters until almost Alaska, a few kilometers from the sea. During the adventure, we'll discover the culture of the Tahltan people. They could be considered as the children of the Stikine River because they vowed their survival to it for millennia. We'll then explore the Grand Canyon of the Stikine River, often compared to the Grand Canyon of Colorado. That gives you an idea of the size of the beast. The adventure comes to an end at a place called Great Glacier. Nothing more to say, the name says it all.
Okay, I'm gonna fly a bit higher.
On the way to the sacred headwaters, the two adventurers fly over a famous attraction of northwestern BC, Cascade Falls on the Iskut River. Before arriving here, the water has already made an epic journey of many days, months, maybe even years. In fact, each of these water molecules began its journey long before landing on Earth, thousands of kilometers from here, in the ocean. As they absorb the sun's energy, the surface molecules heat up and turn to water vapor, which rises into the atmosphere. The humid air is pushed onto land by the prevailing winds, and when it hits the mountains, is forced to rise. It cools and condenses to form clouds, and finally, rain. Over 100 million tons of water fall on the Earth's surface every minute. That's enough to fill Lake Titicaca in a week. But in the sacred headwaters, a cluster of mountains in the vast wilderness of northern BC, when water falls from the sky, the Earth rejoices.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. The landing should be fairly interesting. The wind has really picked up.
At your 2 o'clock, isn't that a place to land? I think it's the runway we saw on the map.
Oh, it could be.
Yeah.
We'll head over that way then.
And I think I see Daniel.
You'll be happy to see another human. There's not too many around here.
That's for sure. Oof. That was interesting. Okay, thanks for the flight.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Fix.
How are you?
Good, you? How's the flight?
Great, wonderful. I see you brought the canoe?
Yeah.
I'll put it on my back. It's pretty dense.
But we'll get through.
We will. And there is the Clapan.
It should be doable. I'm clipped in.
Yep. It's pretty impressive to be at the source of 3 of the biggest rivers in BC, right here in the few square kilometers around us.
You're right. We're at the head of the 3 watersheds.
Right.
To explain what a watershed is, we could use a funnel analogy. The watershed is the area that directs the water to a common outflow. In this case, the mouth of the Stikine River.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is you mentioned a funnel. Here, several funnels meet.
Yeah, that's right. A drop of water that falls a kilometer or 2 east or west of here will take a completely different path. That makes us realize that what drives hydrology is gravity. Here we're about 1,400 meters above sea level, and the mouth is around sea level. So between the two, the water will follow its path, which is the path of least resistance, zigzagging around obstacles.
Well, speaking of the mouth of the Stikine, we'd better head out or we'll never get there.
Agreed.
Tell me you have some canoeing experience?
Well, it's been a few years, but it should come back.
Okay, we'll see what we can do.
Francois Xavier and Daniel head down the Clapan, which flows into the legendary Stikine River. Following a river means experiencing its life, from a small mountain stream to a mighty waterway. The adventurers will discover every step of the path the water takes on land before returning to the ocean and starting its endless cycle again.
Head all the way to the right.
Okay, yeah, to the right.
Well done.
It's not over yet. Okay, it's good.
Good. We can get between them.
Yeah, you can tell we're close to the source. There's not much water.
Fix, what I find fascinating about water is that since the beginning of the Earth, it's existed in practically the same quantity and is constantly circulating.
Exactly. A closed loop that was set in motion when the Earth was first formed. That really gets my imagination going. It's exciting to think about the fact that the water we're floating on now could have been drunk by dinosaurs and flowed in their blood.
Absolutely. And you could even imagine that it used to be on Mount Everest in the form of ice.
That's right. It's a journey through time as well as space.
That makes me think that water in its three phases is closely linked to human history. I'll give you an example. During the last ice age, since most water was concentrated in ice, the sea level was much lower, which allowed people living in Asia to cross the Bering Strait and populate North America.
Yeah, the fate of native peoples is directly related to water. Not only for their survival today, but also for their arrival on the North American continent. Well, we've got ourselves some rapids. So focus, right?
Yeah, let's go. Exactly.
Slightly to the left?
Yeah. Like that.
There's a tree. Oh, we're too much to the left. Oh, shit.
Get out if you can.
Okay.
We should try to back up. That's it.
Made it.
Straight ahead.
Paddle straight.
Keep going.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Nice going, Fix. It's not the big waves. It's the nasty little ones. I think I just pulled a rescue operation over there when we were about to hit that big one and I rode left.
You handled that really well, man. Would have gotten stuck there for sure. After the rapids, dead calm.
Yeah, the water's really calm here. That looks like a beaver dam.
I think you're right.
Yeah. We're on the reservoir of a beaver dam.
It's incredible how much they can change the landscape.
I know. Have you seen how they affect the diversity of local flora and fauna?
They've totally transformed the landscape to their advantage. There's a reason why we call them the engineers of the North.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Huh?
For sure. They work hard. Where we are right now is a good example of water as a habitat. Beavers have used water to change their environment and adapt it to their way of life.
For themselves and a lot of other animal and vegetable species.
Yeah, exactly.
Since the beginning, we've talked about water as a source of life. That reminds me that the NASA's rule of thumb for finding life in the universe is actually to follow the water. Which makes me wonder, what is the property of water that makes it so important to life?
I'd say that the fundamental property of water for life is the fact that it's a universal solvent, meaning that it's something that can dissolve many substances required for life. I'll give you an example involving rainwater, which is starting to fall on this pond. When that water falls and makes contact with soil molecules, it will dissolve certain salts and minerals that can be used by plants to grow. That's a good example of water as a solvent, but also as a carrier. It carries nutrients that are essential to life.
Listening to you, I can't help drawing a parallel between the water system and the human circulatory system. In both cases, water circulates, nourishes, and carries life-sustaining elements from one place to another.
Yeah, that's a good parallel.
So water is the lifeblood of the earth.
If Francois Xavier and Daniel continued paddling 300 kilometers down the Clapan into the Stikine River, crossed the wide plains of the Clastine Valley, and then survived the Stikine Grand Canyon Rapids, they would end up in a little village called Telegraph Creek. Amid the ruins of a dark colonial past, the Tahltan people's daily lives have a vital yet precarious connection to the river's waters.
Feel it, look at that. Feel that? Sharp now.
Long time ago, when they moved with the seasons, and even to this day, even people live a long ways away, the Stikine River is still a gathering point where they could fish, gather up their food for the winter, or in case for the people that live in the cities, they have their fish, their traditional food, and they keep their traditional ways alive. And up and down this river, right to where the Tahltan and the Stikine join together, you'll find our people along this river. And everyone has a unique, different camp. And along these camps, there's different signs of where our people have been there for like 100 years.
Ooh. Eat some soapberries. They're for your blood.
Yeah, good for your blood. Some say it's bitter, but when it's this late, when they're ready to fall off, they're really sweet. They're no longer bitter.
There's some more down the trail, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a nice bush right there.
The way it runs is that the fish would swim up in the stream. This is kind of a rebound energy circle where they gather all their energy back and they regain their strength and they'll shoot up the river again. So generally where we set our net is right where they come to rest. And when they come to rest, they hit it like this, boom. It's like a car doing a U-turn. Oh my God.
Oh, there's some live ones there. Yee! Oh, it's Jack again, eh? Yeah.
Okay, slow, nice and steady.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Holy, look right at the bottom section. That's awesome. Holy smokes, look how many.
No, not this one, Chip. Don't eat jack salmon.
Gotta give it a little repair. Those big king just wreck it, so you don't fix it, then you miss lots of fish.
Plus, your hole just generally gets bigger after a while. And then you gotta ditch your net, which isn't very good.
Yeah, not right now. Not when it's hitting good.
This is my summer job here. And I love to do it. Love being out here, love being on the land. And just love spending time with my dad and my nephew. That's generally what I love the most. Because my dad's not getting old, but he's getting up there. And I want to spend many years as him, and I want to learn many as things as he's learned over his years. And I want to take that knowledge and show other people. Yeah, staying connected to you here, living your culture, keeping your tradition alive. No, and respect your elders is what I was always taught.
They keep coming back.
That's why you give thanks to tobacco. With tobacco, you always...
Do you have any on you?
Yeah, I got snuff on me.
You give thanks, okay? As soon as we're done, you give thanks to the Creator, okay?
Thanks to the Creator for giving these beautiful fish. Pray for your family to keep safe along the river.
It could be this kind of tobacco, it could be loose tobacco.
Cigarettes. As long as you're giving thanks with tobacco, it's the only thing.
Give thanks back to the river because it's actually a living, breathing thing.
I should do it on my net pole because generally we're fishing right here, so. Thank you, Lord, Creator. Keep you safe along the water. Keep everybody safe in the water. People don't realize how much they have until it's gone.
Don't leave a straggler behind. That's a perfect one.
The scariest part was when that Mount Polly broke open there. And it was polluting all the rivers and kind of gave a scare here. But now we have one of our own Mount Pollys in our backyard, Red Crested. That's not very good. That's our headwaters, sacred headwaters.
This country is so vast, but you know, a lot of it is protected, which is a great thing. And we have, you know, Idzaidza, which is this massive park connected to the canyon and then connected to Spatsizi. And in between, at the very epicenter of this whole valley, the place that if you were to throw a dart at a map of the whole Stikine and hit the epicenter, that would literally be Tottigan Mountain. In any other place in the world, Tottigan would have been protected as a national park. I mean, where else on earth can you stop by the side of a public highway, take your child by the hand, walk up a trail onto a beautiful soaring plateau and find yourself surrounded by 400 stone sheep? Canadians love the idea of the North, but none of them go there. And so what we've had to do to raise awareness of this very special place is to bring the place to the people through books and films and public presentations and so on. And Monty's played a tremendous role in that collective effort. I could be wrong, but I can't think of any other filmmaker who was there as early as Monty was and has covered as much as he did.
Yeah, the sheep have been here, bedded down. This population here on the mountain is probably the largest concentration in the world of stone sheep. They're of the subspecies called thinhorn. And to the west, there's another thinhorn subspecies called Dall. And during the last ice age, this mountain and say the next mountain would be above the ice. And it would allow the, say, stone sheep like here to evolve as their own kind of separate genetic strains. There was no interaction at some time with any of the parameter species, and so they became unique. They lay out like this one on the knolls, right out on the tip of these knolls with cliffs dropping off like you can see below them. And it's such a great protective mechanism because they're always aware of what's below them. It's like a fortress in a castle. Their whole defense is escape. So if they're attacked from below, they just escape out the back. If they're attacked from below on these promontories that stick out like this one, they just go down into the cliffs. Most people would not understand this. But I get in here, and particularly when I'm by myself, and after a little while I lose a sense of self. And you just kind of become part of the landscape. This whole egocentric concept that death is such a terminus tells me a lot that people aren't part of the flow. But when you get up here, it's just the balance between life and death is a very foggy. It's like when the clouds come in here. At what point did you die and just become part of the clouds, and what point are you still an observer?
This is the Grand Canyon of the Stikine, the largest canyon in Canada. Over a 70-kilometer stretch, the Stikine River has carved a 300-meter-deep maze in the rock. This is the next step for the Uncharted Canada team. This vertical world is mountain goat heaven. They've been living here, safe from large predators, for thousands of years. Their muscular frame and hooves equipped with gripping pads allow them to negotiate the most vertical of walls. Humans will always be guests passing through here.
Approach carefully, guys.
Oh my God.
Wow.
How many meters?
Oh, there's at least 200 meters.
Check out the power of those rapids.
It's incredible. Kayakers go down this river. Can you imagine?
Only a few years ago, people thought it would be impossible. A series of 40 rapids over 70 kilometers. Once you're on the river, you're committed. It's one of the hardest descents in the world. It's a bit like Mount Everest for kayakers.
So that's where you want us to go.
We'll take a closer look. We'll set up some ropes and harnesses and get ready to make a nice descent.
To get closer to the Stikine River Rapids, the three men will attempt a 300-meter rappel through the void down to the bottom of the canyon.
Hey, that's good. You're still smiling.
Okay.
At least for now.
Now keep leaning and put the rope on top. Aim for that corner.
Okay, here I go.
I feel really alive doing stuff like this.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's what rock climbing does. It makes you feel alive.
The more I look at the river, the more I keep thinking, how is it possible that a river like this, powerful as it may be, could carve out a canyon over 200 meters deep?
What we see here is the river's incredible erosion work over the years. You have to realize that there's a constant battle between the force of tectonics, or volcanic activity, that tends to push the rock up, and water in solid and liquid form that tends to flatten and create furrows. So through the force of its impact, the water will weaken the rock and break off small pieces that we call sediment, which will be carried off by the water. It has an extremely abrasive effect here, like sandpaper.
So there's a lot of sediment flowing down the Stikine.
Yes, exactly, and of all sizes. You can see by the color of the river itself. It's not transparent, it's opaque. That's an indication of its sediment load. You also have to remember that the flow is heavy. It's moving fast, and there's a lot of turbulence. There are very fine particles that will remain suspended in the water a long time. But it also carries gravel and sand, and during major flooding, it will also carry large chunks. All that reshapes the landscape.
Well, let's take a closer look.
Should we head down?
Yep, let's go.
All right.
The adventurers resume their descent into the canyon depths. A few hundred meters below resound some of the fiercest rapids in Canada. Francois Xavier, Damien, and hydrologist Daniel Nadeau have reached the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Unlike the Grand Canyon in Colorado, no dam disrupts the flow of the Stikine. No tourists visit the rock maze it is carved out, and frankly, few even know it exists. That's the magic of the Stikine Grand Canyon. In this natural setting, it's water that holds all the cards.
The power of this river is incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The insane amount of water makes me wonder where it all comes from.
That's an excellent question, Fix. In fact, there's no consensus yet in the scientific community. as to the exact origin of water on Earth. One thing we know for sure is that it's been here for a very long time. The first sign of liquid water on Earth goes back 3.8 billion years, if you can imagine. One theory about the origin of water is that it arrived on meteorites. Studies have shown that the chemical composition of the ice contained in meteorites is the same as that of water on Earth. They match up. Back then, there was pretty constant volcanic activity. So you have to imagine meteorites full of ice landing on Earth. The ice melts, and due to the heat, it's expelled in the form of vapor. This formed a layer of gas enveloping the Earth. And over time, volcanic activity tapered off, and everything cooled down and condensed to form the liquid water that we see today.
Speaking of volcanoes, there's another theory by which the volcanoes themselves expelled a certain amount of water into the atmosphere.
Exactly. According to that theory, volcanoes shot up water that was already contained in the Earth's crust. So there's a dichotomy between the two theories. Does water have extraterrestrial origins through meteorites, or has it been an integral part of the Earth since the very beginning?
I imagine it's probably a mix of both sources.
Yeah, that's quite probable, yes.
You seem to be implying that there's water throughout the universe, that it's quite common.
I think there's no real doubt that there's water throughout the universe. But the real question is, can we observe liquid water or water in its three phases? What's unusual about planet Earth is that we're at just the right distance from the sun, where water can coexist in its three phases at normal temperature and pressure. If we get closer to the sun, all the water would become vapor. If we moved away, it would all turn to ice, which is not suitable for the emergence of life.
So we're very lucky to have just the right balance.
Yes, exactly.
Planet Earth is really lucky.
Yeah.
From here, the Stikine River roars down over 50 kilometers in an uninterrupted series of fierce, powerful rapids. No salmon swimming up the Stikine can negotiate its rapids, which is why at the end of the canyon, near the small community of Telegraph Creek, the fishing is always good.
So you stick your fingers in his eyeball. You have more control over your slices and your cuts.
They go up the mountain, they go to level mountain, and they do their... You get the fish put away? Watch out now. Knives are just flying by here. And then you keep your fish clean when you're skinning, you're gutting your fish, and then once you get it back and fillet her and stuff, she won't complain.
Mom, what did you say? It took you about 3 years to learn the perfect fillet, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Filleting fish is just like anything else in the process. It takes time to learn.
That's fish plate. Is this a dry fish?
Or dry fish, yeah. Run that and cut fish and clean fish and hang fish, then cut fish again. Oh, and then you salt them and then you hang them. I forgot to put the salt in there.
As you see her, she points her blade at a certain angle, and then she comes out with the perfect fillet every time. And then when I do mine, mine comes out in like chicken strips. You observe just the way her knife and her blade sits on the meat. Me as a young person, I'll still always be in the learning process.
And you see how they're hanging? Their body style is heading upriver. Okay? They're carrying on with their journey. That's why you hang them. There's a certain way you hang fish when you bring them out of the river. Well, this year, fish was really late, and it goes to wonder, are they really can't fight that pollution that's in the ocean anymore, or are they overfishing with the commercial license fishing down the river? You think of all this stuff because we tie in with the river so closely and with the animals so closely that this is part of our food chain. This is who we are. It talks about your identity, Tahltan people. Well, a fish, the fish that you see us doing has been done like this for hundreds of years by our elders, and it's hard work, but it's fun work. On the way to grab some more.
Now they're telling us we can't eat fish out of this lake and the Oliver Lake. They didn't say anything of the lakes beyond this, but I mean, logic would tell you not to eat the fish out of the lakes below these lakes. This is all water. This whole area is water. Everywhere you look, it's a tributary, like that's why we call this the sacred headwaters. Then you got this mine, Red Chris, sitting right smack dab in the middle of that. Our water's poisoned. I mean, I don't care what you say about it, you could say it's contaminated. The bottom line is it's poisoned if we can't eat it, right? We can't eat the fish.
The main thing that's happening on this mountain is this copper gold mine. And it's low-grade copper, which means that they have to take a huge amount of materials out to get anything worth selling. So what we see is the overburden that's being stacked after the ore's been extracted out of it. But the thing that really is going to kill this mountain is they're putting 2 dams, one on the north side, which is already in, but they're proposing for the south side a dam that's 330 meters. And it's the same company that brought this disaster called Mount Polly.
On August 4th, 2014, near the village of Likely, BC, the wall of one of Mount Polly's mine's tailing ponds gave way under the weight of the wastewater, and 24 million liters of slurry ended up in the surrounding waterways. It was one of the worst ecological disasters in Canadian history. The Tottigan Tailing Pond, of similar design to that of Mount Polly, is considered by many to be a ticking time bomb.
If and when, and they do say when, everybody says when, that dam gives way, it will take out and lay in layers of arsenic and heavy metals all the way down that valley. It'll come, it'll turn, go into these lakes, and then all of these lakes going out to the coast.
It's not as if this mine site is isolated. If something goes wrong, it'll go very wrong. There's 4,000 open-pit copper and gold mines in the world, and to my mind, putting one on Tottigan Mountain, home to the largest population of a charismatic ungulate species of stone sheep in the world, was rather like drilling for oil in the Sistine Chapel.
They've brought easily 200 kilometers or more of high-powered transmission lines right through the middle of the most virgin area of northern Canada for one mine, and that mine will be gone in 25 years from now. It's insane.
Truly wild lands have any number of values. I mean, obviously spiritual, but also economic. Don't forget that travel and tourism is a $3.5 trillion business around the world. It is the biggest economic engine on the planet. The entire capitalization of every mining company in the world doesn't add up to $1 trillion. Our landscape is who we are. It's what makes the spirit of this place. And so I don't care how much you want to tell me we become demographically an urban place. You cannot be Canadian, in a sense, if you don't feel and listen to the whispered messages of the wild.
Imagine, I'm going to be gone one of these days, and for 12,000 years, if this water has memory, it's seen so many of us come and go. But you can't even say that it's seen so many of us come and go because, I've been drinking this water for 10 years, so therefore I'm upwards to 80% of this water. Like, the moose is drinking the same water that comes from the clouds, it goes down to the ocean, it comes back, and it falls here, and we're all drinking the same water, so therefore we're all the same thing. We're the water. We are the water. It's really amazing.
Oh wow, you can see all the sediments there.
Damien, Francois Xavier, and their guest, hydrologist Daniel Nadeau, are en route for the final chapter of their river exploration, Great Glacier Provincial Park. They took off from the small village of Telegraph Creek at the mouth of the Grand Canyon and are now flying over the river toward the ocean. The Great Glacier awaits a few kilometers from the Alaskan border.
There are some incredible meanders down there. The river kind of disappears into the forest. Wow, that valley is totally U-shaped.
That's the sign of a glacial valley.
Yeah, it's really perfect.
What I love is the sun's reflection on the Stikine. It's fantastic.
Fix and Damien, you'll notice how much the landscape has opened up. The Stikine's bed is much wider than we saw earlier in the canyon. Here we're right at the bottom of the watershed, near the outflow where the Stikine River flows into the Pacific Ocean. Higher up in the watershed, we were in an area where the river scraped away sediment from the landscape. Here we're in an area where it deposits it. And you'll notice lots of sandbanks here and there. I'll give you an example with this bottle I brought. You see that the water's fairly clear here, but the main thing is how much deposit there is at the bottom.
That's water from the Stikine?
Yes, I took it from the Stikine just now. I'll show you something. This is an example of calm water where there's a deposit. When it's turbulent, when the water is constantly churning in the narrow sections, we'll see to what extent the sediment carried off by the water remains in suspension. I'll show you what happens when I shake it up. Notice that at the bottom, the sediment is deposited according to its size. The largest particles first, followed gradually by everything else.
So as the water slows down, the larger sediments will be deposited. Then the smaller ones, and so on?
Exactly. Have you noticed how the waters of the Stikine are not really transparent? It's a bit like this water. The water column is still loaded with fine sediment, which takes a really long time to settle. This sediment will most likely end up in the ocean as is, through the Stikine Delta over there.
Do you see those bergs? Oh, well.
We're getting to the Great Glacier. You can see the glacier right there.
Yeah, you can see it right at the end of the valley. It's almost surreal. A lake full of icebergs in the middle of the forest.
We need to find a spot where there aren't too many icebergs.
What I'm actually gonna do, I'm just gonna come through those two bergs right there and then land.
We touched down between two icebergs. Our pilot is really skilled, and we are now surrounded by sandbanks, icebergs, and the sun. We are so spoiled.
It's really hard to describe. We're on a lake filled with icebergs. That's something I've never seen before. And the idea of exploring that glacier is something else. It's really incredible.
Separated from the Stikine River by a thin strip of land that was formerly the front edge of the ice tongue, Great Glacier Lake bears witness to the glacier's former immensity. The adventurers make their way among the icebergs littering the surface of the lake, a crystalline fairy tale world created unknowingly by human hands.
Look at the iceberg there.
It's beautiful.
Incredible, huh?
Yeah.
During our adventure, we've explored two phases of water, gaseous and liquid. I find it quite apropos to end our adventure with the last phase, the solid phase, in the form of ice.
Yeah, in terms of freshwater stocks, it's the most important phase in the water cycle. Did you know that of all the water available on Earth, only 3% is fresh water? And of that 3%, 69% is contained in the solid phase, meaning in the form of ice or snow, and 30% is contained in the ground. Did you hear that cracking sound?
Something cracked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is cracking all around us.
30% is contained in the ground, and only 1% is available in the form of surface water.
So 1% of 3% of the total amount of water. So not much water is directly available for consumption. It's interesting. We're floating on this lake, but not that long ago, the glacier covered the entire surface of the lake. I heard there's a Tahltan legend about how the glacier extended so far that it met the other glacier that came from the other side of the valley. It formed a kind of ice bridge across the valley, and according to the legend, that's where the final battle took place between the Tahltan and the Tlingit, who lived farther down the valley. It's funny to think that if the battle had taken place now in the same spot, they'd have fought in the water. Wow. Wanna check out the cave, guys?
You go. I'll be happy to watch.
Help me out, Daniel.
Yeah, I'll help. If you want, I could hoist you up.
Hoist me right up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try.
Like this?
Good.
1, 2, 3.
But it keeps... Yeah.
What service, eh?
Yeah, but you'll have to hold on to me because...
I've got you.
It's going to slip. What service? Almost feel like I'm walking on water. The ice is really soaked with water here.
Yeah, you can see that it's really melting.
Yeah, it's melting really fast.
Did you know that part of this water will evaporate, rise into the atmosphere, and act as a greenhouse gas? We often forget that water vapor is the main greenhouse gas.
Oh, really?
We often talk about how greenhouse gases are harmful and connected to global warming. But did you know that if there was no greenhouse gases, the temperature of the planet would be minus 18 Celsius?
So basically, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are natural.
Yes, exactly. What happens is that greenhouse gases act as a kind of blanket around planet Earth. It's like a greenhouse that maintains heat at a certain level and makes it so that the average temperature on Earth is around 15 degrees Celsius on average.
On average, eh?
Yeah. The problem is that at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the mid-19th century, humans started using hydrocarbons, and through combustion, artificially injected more greenhouse gases. Since then, we've noticed that temperatures have risen. It's gotten hotter. It's like we've made the blanket enveloping planet Earth thicker.
So there's been an increase, but what kind of amounts are we talking about?
We've had direct CO2 measurements since around the mid-1950s. There's an astronomical observatory in Hawaii that's taken constant measurements since that time. And we've noted increases ever since then. The question is trying to put the current concentrations of greenhouse gases, in particular CO2, in perspective over a longer period of time. It's interesting we're standing on an iceberg because through information contained in the ice, we can prolong the time span. In Antarctica, there's a glacier several kilometers thick. Scientists drilled an ice core, and by analyzing the bubbles contained in the ice, we're able to track the concentration of greenhouse gases back to very ancient times. What they noticed is that the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere has never been as high in 400,000 years.
In the early 20th century, visitors arriving by boat from Alaska could easily reach the glacier from the banks of the Stikine. A little over 100 years later, our friends need to paddle over 4 kilometers in a canoe to reach the edges of the ice tongue. The glacier, like the vast majority of glaciers around the world, has already lost close to 2/3 of its mass. Western Canada is one of the 3 regions in the world most affected by melting glaciers. After Alaska and Patagonia, Great Glacier won't survive the turn of the next century. As they approach the monumental yet fleeting ice pack, our friends don't know whether to celebrate its beauty or mourn its passing.
Wow. That's not something you see every day, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty special. This is where the ice finishes its great journey.
Plus, we can hear the ice melt flowing under the glacier into the lake.
See that? I'm really amazed by the intensity of the blue in the crevices.
If the three men had one lesson to draw from their adventure, it would be the degree to which water connects us all. Pollution from a mine at the headwaters of the Stikine River can impact salmon stocks in Alaska, 600 kilometers downstream. The same is true of the climate. We can see it here at Great Glacier. Greenhouse gas emissions from anywhere in the world cause glaciers to melt in the middle of Canada. Once again, it's like the blood that flows in our veins. If a limb, an organ, or even a milliliter of blood becomes infected, the entire body gets sick. The worldwide interconnection created by water is remarkable, but also dangerous. It gives humans an enormous responsibility. Every local action instantly becomes global through water's tremendous capacity to move around and connect us. The Great Canadian Wilderness, where water and vegetation rule their domain. It's hard to imagine that in the past, the landscape looked more like this. Once upon a time, volcanoes had free reign over this land. Then how was nature able to create such abundance from a heap of smoking ash? That's the great story of life. While volcanoes in Canada are a treasure jealously kept hidden by nature, they are still responsible for some of the most enchanting landscapes. But these volcanic gems, concealed with natural expanses, are accessible only to the most adventurous. The Uncharted Canada team set out to discover the volcanoes of British Columbia. They're getting ready to embark on an almost 2,000-kilometer trek along the string of volcanoes that stretches across the province from north to south. Like Pinatubo in the Philippines, Krakatoa in Indonesia, and Mount St. Helens in the U.S., the volcanoes of BC are part of a gigantic belt of volcanoes circling the Pacific Ocean, known as the Ring of Fire. From the far south to the north of BC, the adventurers will embark on a trek that will take them through some of the most stunning volcanic sites. Starting from the Garibaldi Massif, they'll make a stop at Box Canyon, carved out of the lava. Discover Canada's most recent and deadliest lava flow, the Nisga's lava field, and end up at the Aziza volcano, a mountain sacred to the Tahltan people. This is Mount Garibaldi. From the outside, it looks like any other mountain. But inside, it's quite another story. The mountain, like most of the surrounding summits, is actually nothing but a fragile cap perched over the boiling cauldron that is our planet's core. We are 70 kilometers north of Vancouver, at the end of a chain of volcanoes extending from California to Canada, the Cascade Volcanic Arc. Any of these volcanoes could erupt at any moment. With a surrounding population of over 10 million people, it's one of the most dangerous volcanic chains in the world. Mount Garibaldi and its neighbors are no exception. Our adventurers, Damien and Francois Xavier, begin their trek here on Black Tusk, a pinnacle in Garibaldi Provincial Park.
C'est juste que problem is, if one rock falls, I fall with it. Okay, Glenn, you can go.
Okay.
Careful the rock.
Yeah.
It's really crumbly. Whoa. What better introduction to our adventure than climbing the most famous peak in the area, which is, on top of it all, a classic example of a volcano. Climbing up towards me is volcanologist Glenn William Jones, who will accompany us throughout the adventure. At the summit, we'll meet up with Damien, who's in a plane rather than on foot. He'll be kind of like our eye in the sky as we explore this landscape. As we head north during our exploration of volcanism, we'll travel not only through space, but also through time, as we turn back the geological clock to the birth of our planet, but also to the origin of life. You okay?
Oh, yeah.
We're almost there, huh?
Hey, cool.
Congrats.
Excellent.
Quite the view, huh?
Oh, that's incredible. We can totally see everything. It really was worth it.
Look at the color of the lake.
Fix, do you read me?
Damien, I read you loud and clear, and I can even hear the sound of your engine.
I'm heading your way. What side of the Black Tusk are you on?
The south side.
I'll try to find you. It's amazing. The color of the lake is gorgeous today.
I think Glenn and I are a little jealous.
Absolutely.
Well, you earned the view way more than I did.
It's incredible. It's like the landscape was painted in black and white. It's a mix of ice and rock.
Yes, and that's characteristic of this part of the world. It's glacial-volcanism, and we're known for that in British Columbia. So there was an intrusion of magma, of molten rock beneath the ice. Basically, everything we see here dates to around the end of the last ice age, about 10 to 12,000 years ago.
There used to be much more ice here.
Yes, I mean, 12 to 13,000 years ago, you can see maybe 200 to 300 meters of ice above our head.
Right here?
Yeah.
Above our heads. Okay, so Mount Garibaldi was almost entirely covered in ice.
Yes, the ice would have been, at the level of the summits here.
At summit level. So all the mountains we see here are volcanoes.
Yeah, exactly.
That were formed under the ice.
Most of them.
So the lava comes out of the Earth's core?
From the crust.
And it meets the ice that melts instantly, I imagine.
It melts instantly in a super energetic, explosive reaction. And what's really interesting, if you look at Mount Garibaldi, it's a young volcano. Probably just 250,000 years old.
Okay.
But that formed under the ice. But a lot of it passed through the ice, and the ash and lava built up a large part of the structure that we see above the ice.
Above the ice?
Yes.
So when the ice disappeared at the end of the ice age, the volcano had no more foundation and collapsed?
Yes, and with gravity and time, all this will fall to pieces.
Do you read me, Fix?
Loud and clear, Damien. He's just to the left of the mountain, right across the glacier.
Beautiful. I'll head straight to the mountain.
Whoa. Wow, that's just incredible.
The Black Tusk is very well named. It's a real rock spur. I'm passing over Table Mountain. It's a strangely shaped mountain with a flat top.
The strangely shaped mountain Damien mentioned, just like Black Tusk, is a real specialty of Canadian volcanology. They're what are called tuyas. Once again, these shapes are a result of the titanic battle between ice and lava. As it rose to the surface, the lava melted a passage in the ice that was then solidified by the cold. It was only at the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago, that these otherworldly shaped peaks became exposed.
I have to say these geological scales are hard for lay people to wrap their heads around. You say 2 million years or 2 billion years?
Yeah, that's normal. Humans are recent and we don't live very long. But the Earth is 4.6 billion years old.
Yeah.
We're a blip in geologic history. But if you like, we could draw a scale. So, why not start here? This will be 4.6 billion years, right here.
Yeah?
So you go over to that mount. You'll be the modern age.
The present.
The present, exactly.
Works for me. I like this game.
My jacket will be 4.6 billion years ago.
The origin of the Earth?
The origin of the Earth. The next one will be our ancestors. 1.5 billion years ago.
So you just skipped over a period of 3 billion years.
Yeah, this is our first ancestor. A small bacteria in the ocean.
Okay.
Now we'll see something that everyone has heard about.
Oh, you're getting really close.
65 million years ago was the end of the dinosaurs.
Wow, okay.
So right here, it's the arrival of modern humans. So to make this easier to grasp, make the scale in 24 hours. Modern humans arrived at about 4 seconds before midnight.
Wow, okay. We're pretty recent.
Yeah, incredible.
And pretty insignificant.
Absolutely.
The dizzying immensity of geological time reduces humans to but a footnote in history. But shockingly, the volcanoes here aren't much older. The first North Americans colonized this land around 10,000 BC. So it's not that fanciful to imagine that humans could have had a front row seat when some of these rocky behemoths were formed. To understand the volcanoes of BC, we need to look to the sea. The Pacific Ocean is circled by a giant ring of volcanoes that constantly rattle the planet with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, from the Philippines to Chile, from Kamchatka to British Columbia. It's called the Ring of Fire. At the origin of this constant volcanic activity is the oceanic ridge. This is where the oceanic crust is formed. Magma rising from the Earth's core creates convection cycles that pull apart the oceanic plates at a rate of 4 centimeters per year. It's through this process that the continent moves. It's what's called plate tectonics. When the oceanic plate meets the continent, it dips down toward the Earth's core. As it travels downward, the rock melts, rises again to the surface, loaded with gas, pierces the continental crust, and causes an eruption. We're off Vancouver Island on the west coast of BC. This is the Juan de Fuca Ridge. It's responsible for the volcanism of a large part of the west coast. At a depth of close to 2,500 meters, it's one of the most inaccessible places on the planet. This ship, run by the Oceanic Research Institute, Ocean Networks Canada, is headed for the Juan de Fuca Ridge. In 2007, at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, the Institute set up the largest underwater ocean observation network in the world, the Neptune Network. With a fiber optic cable stretching over 800 kilometers, the Neptune Network is strategically located under the Juan de Fuca tectonic plate. Through instruments and sensors connected to the entire length of the network, scientists can observe the oceanic processes like never before.
We're like an astronomical telescope, a large facility used to observe the ocean and its physical, geological, and biological processes. We provide data from the entire network to scientists at universities throughout the world. This summer, we're getting ready to expand the network to the Endeavour Ridge. Since all the maintenance work on the network is done at extremely great depths, we need a robotic, remote-controlled submarine that works 24/7.
At nightfall, they reach the Juan de Fuca Ridge. 2.5 kilometers below the ship extends the volcanic site known as the Endeavour Hydrothermal Vents. It's the place farthest away from their network of instruments, and also the hardest to access. A long night's work begins for the Ocean Networks team. As the remote-controlled submarine heads toward the abyss of the underwater volcanic site, the Ocean Networks team observes a moving pageant. A series of creatures, from the commonest species to the strangest life forms, appear before their camera, like an open book of evolution. Extreme ocean depths remain to this day a profound mystery to scientists. Strangely enough, we seem to know more about outer space than the ocean depths, but it is possible to see a certain resemblance. At last, the submarine reaches the bottom. Before it, in the inky blackness of the ocean depths, the famous Endeavour hydrothermal vents come into view. Nowhere else in Canada can we feel closer to the Earth's core. Like surface volcanoes, the volcanic vents spit out burning hot clouds of smoke that raise the water temperature here to over 300 degrees Celsius. In such extreme conditions, it's easy to think that no life could emerge. But it's quite the opposite. Some suspect that life on Earth actually began here. The submarine robot of the Ocean Networks Canada Research Institute has reached the Endeavour hydrothermal vents on the Juan de Fuca Ridge. The big job of repairing and extending the Institute's research facilities starts at a depth of 2,500 meters.
Keith has one junction box out here with an extension cable back to RCM North.
Hydrothermal vents form when two oceanic plates separate from one another, which is the case at the Endeavour site, and magma rises to the surface. Buckling under the colossal pressure, the crust forms cracks, allowing water to leak down toward the mantle. Pushed by the high temperature and pressure, the water rises again to the surface, dissolving the surrounding minerals and rock, and, as with a volcanic eruption, projects debris into the ocean. As they cool down, the minerals precipitate and form vents. But the story doesn't end here, because as soon as the vents form, life emerges immediately.
It was a big surprise for researchers to discover that there could be ecosystems on Earth that were completely independent of the sun and photosynthesis. That completely changed our ideas about life on other planets, in our solar system, and elsewhere in the universe. It seems like a hostile environment where life is impossible, but it's a high-energy environment in a food desert. There's no food at 2,000 meters. It's very far from the surface, and there's very little to eat.
The solution that life found to the total absence of light, and therefore photosynthesis, around the hydrothermal vents is called chemosynthesis. With no access to solar energy, organisms use the chemical energy given off by the volcanic vents to transform CO2 to organic matter, just like with photosynthesis.
And that's what forms the basis of the food chain at the hot springs. Bacteria transform chemical energy into matter, into biomass, and the fauna there either eats bacteria directly or lives with it in symbiosis. There's a large abundance of worms that lack a mouth and a digestive system. They live entirely from the bacteria that live in symbiosis inside their bodies.
These worms of the depths absorb dissolved gases, such as H2S, CO2, and oxygen, using the red gills that adorn their upper bodies. The molecules penetrate into their circulatory system and are brought to the bacteria, which carry out the chemosynthesis reaction that feeds the worms. It's a wonderful example of what we call symbiosis, a collaboration between two species to adapt to their environment and allow for their survival.
Some researchers suggest that life on Earth actually began around thermal springs hundreds of millions of years ago. At that time, the surface of the Earth was quite hostile. It had no ozone layer, there were UV rays, it was bombarded by rubble from comets, and so on. But underwater, in the oceans, the environment was far more stable, and there was constant energy coming from the thermal springs. The springs acted as a kind of bioreactor. So, when the first molecules of life formed, they were allowed to recirculate in the environment, and this increased the possibility of meeting other molecules. And that's exactly what had to happen to form the first cells. These cells, once formed, then stayed in the environment to absorb minerals.
While volcanoes are mountains forged by fire, they often meet their end through water. In a volcano's young, shifting soil, the slightest stream can create dizzying voids. These are the Brandywine Falls. At the foot of the Garibaldi volcano, water is carved out of the layers of lava, a rocky cirque 70 meters high. Volcanoes are hastily built mountains and much more fragile than they look. Subjected to the laws of erosion, they don't resist the passage of time for long. One of the most striking examples of erosion can be found at a place those in the know call Box Canyon.
Watch out. You have to go easy here. It's incredible. As you move forward into the canyon, you really feel like you're going into the heart of the mountain. And the further we go, the more the jaws of rock close in over our heads. The amazing thing is that there are two completely different types of rock. Basalt to our left and granite to our right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the origins are actually really quite similar. These rocks formed by magma, but in the case of granite, the rock remained underground, whereas the basalt, it rose out of the ground onto the surface beneath our atmosphere.
So that's a big difference between basalt and granite. On one side, we have lava that flowed from a volcano and cooled off by contact with the air, while the granite here is also magma, but it rose up and stayed underground where it cooled off.
And it was probably, tens of kilometers underground.
How old is a rock like this?
This one here is about 100 million years old.
And that rock there?
And that one over there, about 10,000 to maybe 30,000 years old.
Which is the same age as Mount Garibaldi.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a clear difference here between the look of these two rocks.
Yeah, and the granite is really resistant. The minerals are extremely hard. Whereas if we look at the lava, the basalt, it's full of fractures, it breaks into chunks very easily. So you can see all those joints.
So all the rock missing from up there is under our feet.
Yeah, underneath our feet.
And that's why we're wearing helmets.
That's why we should move along.
Yeah, that's a good idea. What's that rock?
This is where we enter Box Canyon. We'll rappel down with a rope, and Fix will be there to greet you in the pool. Spread your legs and lean backwards. We'll go bit by bit. It'll be fun.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right then. Earlier we were saying that it felt like going down to the center of the earth. But this time it's real. Have you looked below?
No, not yet. Yeah, we'll see.
You'll see it soon.
If you were here, you'd see. It's pretty impressive. Okay, here we go.
Good?
Hidden for millennia in dense vegetation, Box Canyon was discovered by canyoneers barely 2 years ago. Only a handful of adventurers can harness its secrets and its dangers. Anyone who enters Box Canyon is fully committed, since the only way out is to follow it downwards. Damien, Francois Xavier, and their guest, volcanologist Glenn Williams-Jones, have entered the canyon carved into the granite known as Box Canyon, only a few kilometers from the Garibaldi volcano.
This is excellent. It's incredible. Oh, yeah.
It's extremely impressive entering Box Canyon. The water flowing through that crack in the rock at an incredible speed, with incredible power. The air rumbles from the power of the waterfall. You really feel in the canyon at that point, at the center of the earth.
Going in for the first time, I thought, am I really going to be able to do this? I didn't have much rock climbing experience to speak of, and seeing that torrent of water, I wasn't sure it was going to end well.
There's no way to turn around once you're committed. You have to follow the waterway to the end, to the exit. And getting hurt in a canyon like this could have major consequences.
You really feel alone in the world in this place, and no one will come looking for you.
You're almost suspended in time, cut off from the world, and surrounded by these walls of granite and basalt. It's really beautiful.
The erosion there is just incredible. And you can see how it varies from one year to the next. You know, over tens of thousands of years. It was incredible, you know, seeing the power of the water and the power of the erosion that cut through that granite. It really is something primordial. On an intellectual level, you can say, yeah, I can see the power of erosion, but it wasn't the same being in it, having that torrent in my face. I felt it in my bones, the constant impact of the water. And I'm not made of rock.
The further you go into the canyon, the more you really feel like you're underground. It's extremely narrow and extremely deep. No light gets in, and the walls are perfectly smooth. Not even moss can grow here at the bottom. Right when you really feel like you've reached the center of the mountain, there's a tube maybe 1 meter in diameter, really narrow, with a waterfall flowing through it. And at the end of the tube, around 20 meters deep, you see light. Then you think, okay, if I can get through the tube, I'll get out of the canyon.
There's a very meditative aspect to it. You go into the center of the earth, you cut off from the world, you don't even know really what time it is. And when you come back out, you feel like you're reborn, like you've come back into the world. You can see the green of the trees, hear the sounds and bird calls.
You know, it's all well and good to look at things in a book from an intellectual perspective. But it's when you feel it and you live it, that experience, that really makes things fascinating.
While the lava that partly makes up this canyon flowed barely 10,000 years ago, a blip on the geological timescale, some volcanic events in Canada are much more recent. So recent that people remember them. But humans and volcanoes can be a very bad combination. Located on the Nass River in central western BC, the village of Gitwinsilk is as peaceful as they come. Yet the community has a tragic history. It was founded by the survivors of the worst natural disaster in Canadian history. Around 300 years ago, the Tsiks volcano erupted 20 kilometers away from the Nass River. Lava flowed down the valley, burying 2 Nizhga villages along the way. 2,000 people lost their lives. The survivors passed the story of the eruption down through generations. As a result, we can hear a detailed version of the account today, directly from their descendants.
The ground started to shake. It's like an earthquake. They thought it was an earthquake. And they could see smoke coming over the mountain behind them. They reported about a horrible fire monster. They called it Lachmich. Lachmich literally translates as to be on the flames or on the fire. They described this monster as having legs of fire. It had a body of mist and steam. When it came, it was moving too fast for them to run away. It got covered by the lava. Other people running away from the lava were burnt by the fires. Those who came on this side of that lake, with the lava, it pushed the river in front of it. And so a wall of water coming this way. So those members of our family did so by climbing on this mountainside, going above where the water was pushing. And they say the river was fighting the fire. They could see these 2 monsters fighting each other for who's going to get to go by.
The Nizhga lava fields are a burial site, a natural monument to the memory of the dead. Many questions remain about the way the events unfolded And studying the imprints left by the solidified lava can help us learn more. Glenn and his research team went to the source of the lava, the Tseeks volcano. Through observations in the field, they hope to lift the veil on some historical uncertainties.
We're on the site of one of the most recent volcanic eruptions in Canada, around 250 to 300 years ago. We don't know exactly when. The Nisga'a oral history talks in detail about the lava flow. They talk about the fact that it could have killed upwards of 2,000 people. However, there's also some limited evidence from some Spanish sailors who may have been on the Nass River at the same time, who mentioned seeing a wall of fire. So one theory to explain these observations, as well as the speed at which the people may have been killed, is that there could have been a forest fire triggered by the lava flow. You can really see the difference here. These small gas bubbles versus the big ones, around the edges. They're lighter, the other one's much denser. Normally, lava flows are slow moving. You can walk faster than most lava flows. So by carrying out our studies, we're going to try to understand the properties of the rock. Can we try to create models that will tell us, was this a really fast flowing lava flow? Or was it the flow that triggered a forest fire? Did we also have volcanic gases that came out and that was responsible for killing the people?
Aha, look at that. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
Les bulles de gaz ont... So the gas bubbles, they swelled and merged to give us these little things that look almost like wasps' nests or something organic. It means that the lava was very, very liquid and very rich in gas, and that ejected these drops of lava.
So the goal here is to try to understand what happened when the volcano erupted. We do this by looking at the surroundings and also by trying to map the area. The lava flowed down the valley, turned 90 degrees towards the Nass Valley, and then 90 degrees again, farther down. But we don't really know how the various episodes of the flow occurred. And this is when the 3D model that we're trying to make comes in. It will help us better understand what happened.
From up in the air, Francois Xavier and Damien take part in the research effort. Glenn asked them to put their plane to use for creating a model of the flow in 3 dimensions.
We have a camera attached to the frame of our plane just to my left here that I'll be able to switch on when we begin our flyover. Glenn and his assistants give us a very precise flight plan. We'll try to stay constantly at the same altitude above ground, which is 500 meters. We'll fly back and forth in a grid pattern above the lava flow. The idea is to take a lot of photos of the same object from different angles in order to deduce the 3rd dimension. It's called photogrammetry. It's the same principle that we used to use to derive altitude for topographical maps.
Glenn and his team follow the trajectory of the flow and under the blazing sun, reach the lava fields. While sterile in appearance, this rocky desert of 180 square kilometers harbors a resilient flora that has adapted to this lunar landscape. But it will never replace the forest that formerly blanketed the banks of the Nass River.
So this is basically the mold left by a tree that was knocked down from the lava flow. But when you look inside, you can see a very distinctive texture. Is the actual tree catching fire, burning, and the burning is hot enough to remelt the lava and the lava invades this charcoalized tree.
If you burn a piece of lumber and then pour water on it, you'll be left with this, this charcoal pattern.
Même qu'on est très très loin de la source, on voit, even though they're really far from the source, we see almost no crystals in the rock. So this means that the lava was completely liquid right before it cooled. And with samples like that we see here, it's really possible that in fact the lava flow started very quickly and therefore was responsible for killing the people.
As the sun sets over the valley, Francois Xavier and Damien join Glenn and his team to observe the 3D model created using the aerial photos of the flow.
So this is the model, huh?
Beautiful.
And it's really thanks to the photos that you shot.
It's incredible.
There's so much detail. So you found that the speed of the lava is actually what could have been fatal to the Nishka?
Yes. You know, as soon as it entered the valley, it made a 90-degree turn and continued at high speed.
So one of your major discoveries of this research season is that the lava flow was probably very fast-moving?
Yes, and these initial observations by the Niska were correct.
It's pretty incredible being able to make a correlation between science and folklore.
Yes. Oral history is data that we can use. The only difference is the way the data was recorded. It's not written down, it's handed down orally, but it's still good fundamental data.
Damien and Francois Xavier have helped elucidate part of the mystery. Several questions obviously remain, and most of them will be left unanswered, buried under the Niska lava fields. There is beauty in simplicity. It seems that some places have used these four elements as a painter would, soberly and with restraint. Landscapes of infinite simplicity, like a return to the primordial earth before humans, before life. A land that seems completely untrammeled. So when humans set their footprints on the soil of the Aziza volcano, it's with the humility of those returning to their origins.
Wow, we're getting some sun here.
Yeah.
It really brings out the colors, it's fantastic.
But, you know, even without the sun, just the contrast between the colors of the rock, the contrasting red and white.
There's even some purple over there.
Yeah.
And that deep orange there.
Yeah, it's just vivid.
Incredible. So, Glenn, to what do we owe the Aziza Massif?
Well, Aziza is in the Spectrum Range, which is part of the northern Cordilleran volcanic province formed by plate tectonics. But instead of the type of tectonics we saw in Garibaldi, which was subduction,
meaning a plate that slips under another plate.
Yeah, exactly. Here it's a transverse fault, so the plates are moving side by side.
So parallel.
Yeah, horizontal. Yes, parallel. And due to that movement, the continental crust is stretched like an elastic band. And when you stretch an elastic band, it gets thinner in the middle.
The crust gets thinner.
Yeah, the crust gets thinner. And so due to this thinning, magma can more easily form and rise or float to the top. And that's really what's responsible for the formation of this huge volcanic province.
So where we are, the crust is much thinner, right? And the magma could rise to the surface.
Exactly.
Where do these beautiful colors we see around us come from? The red, the purple, and orange?
Well, you know, this spectrum of colors, and thus the name Spectrum Range, is really just due to something pretty simple: rust. Just tiny amounts of iron in the rocks become corroded by the oxygen in the atmosphere. So, as it's corroded by this interaction with the climate, it forms these incredible colors.
We're talking thousands of years, I imagine.
Yeah, thousands of years, absolutely.
Well, sometimes nature does a great job, huh?
Oh, yeah.
It's so beautiful.
You just need lots of patience.
Yeah.
You ready for a foot bath?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder about the temperature.
It's going to be a bit chilly.
It'll wake us up.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty cold.
It'll wake us up.
Yeah. I feel like for every adventure we have to take our shoes off and cross a river. It's getting to be a habit.
Anything for science.
Anything for the science and exploration.
It's a good chance to wash our feet.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine. It's great.
Yeah, stop playing the tough guy. I know you're suffering.
Oh my God. These kinds of scenes, we should film them in the Amazon or Costa Rica or something. You know, without the piranhas.
In a Speedo?
Yeah, in a Speedo.
This really hurts. Glenn, when I walk around a landscape like this, I feel like I've returned to the origin of the planet.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we can imagine being on the Earth's surface billions of years ago.
Yeah.
A surface that was covered in active volcanoes, spewing columns of gas and ash. Seriously, some incredibly hostile conditions. But these volcanoes are in part the reason we eventually got the atmosphere we have now. It was obviously super toxic at the time.
Yeah, at the time there was ammonia.
Yes, CO2, acid gases, sulfur. But one of the most common gases in volcanoes is actually water vapor. And over time, that gave rise to the atmosphere we have now, as well as all of the oceans. And in these primary oceans were the conditions favorable for the eventual development of primordial life.
Could fire have possibly given rise to life? The irony is almost too perfect. Buried in a layer of clouds, the majestic mounted Ziza, sacred to the Taltan people, seems quite indifferent to the life it towers over. Yet everywhere on its slopes, ravaged by successive eruptions, there is a kind of infinitely austere beauty. Far too inaccessible for the uncharted Canada team, Mounted Ziza was left to its cloudy isolation. On their trek around the mountain, the adventurers cross plains so fertile they seem straight out of the Serengeti in Africa. They wear down the soles of their shoes on lava fields as sharp as glass before reaching the final step in their journey, the majestic Eve Cone, a biblical name that, oddly enough, refers once again to our most primordial origins.
And there's Eve Cone in all its splendor. One of the smallest cones in Canada, but also one of the most beautifully shaped. Huh?
It's beautiful.
And it's so beautifully shaped. You can see that it's all black at the top. So there's really not very much lichen yet, which means it's really quite young.
Really young, huh?
Yes. You know, around 1300 years ago, imagine a fountain of lava spewing into the air, jets going up tens to even hundreds of meters high. All this material gradually falls back down to form this cone. You know, it's like a Coke bottle. You just shake up that bottle and you'll see the froth starting to form. Well, that's the volcanic gas under pressure. The cap then flies off and you get this massive explosive eruption.
So the explosive eruptions are due to gases contained in the lava?
Yes, absolutely. These gases expanding are the energy that propels everything upwards.
We can see traces of lava. Is there a way to see gas remnants?
Yes, actually, you know, in the lava there will be remnants. If you take a piece and you break it open, so you can see all these different bubble sizes.
Flattened bubbles too.
Yes, because the lava was moving. So it stretched the vesicles, the bubbles that are in the lava. And there aren't any crystals. We've just seen volcanic glass.
That's volcanic glass.
Yeah.
That trapped the gas.
That makes it very light, right?
Yeah, it makes it much lighter.
Glenn, you told us about the Earth's first billions of years. What happens next?
You got to really imagine the advent of the earliest life, which started, we believe, in an incredibly hostile environment, around vents on the ocean floor. Kilometers deep, these little miniature volcanoes. And then we gradually see the emergence of cyanobacteria, or blue-green algae, which was the beginning of photosynthesis on our planet.
My friends, you're gonna love the view.
Yes, fantastic.
Yeah, quite the view.
It's huge.
And there's the crater.
Yeah.
It's gigantic, a mouth open to the sky. And the crater is right in front of us?
Yeah.
And what was ejected is behind us.
And all the lava flows.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Should we take a walk?
Yeah, towards Itziza.
All right, let's go.
So, were blue-green algae the precursors of the plant kingdom?
Yeah, exactly. Because, what did the blue-green algae do? They removed carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and as a waste, injected that oxygen into the atmosphere. So gradually, the atmosphere starts to really change. So afterwards, plants start to spread all across the planet. And through photosynthesis, they continued changing and modifying the atmosphere by adding more and more oxygen. It's really only afterwards that we see the arrival of animals.
The animal kingdom follows the plant kingdom.
Yes. The first fish dared to crawl onto land and adapt to an atmosphere that was now rich in oxygen. So over time, all life that we see on our planet gradually started to evolve and change.
So, the beginning of a great chain of life.
Exactly.
And at the end of the chain is us humans.
Us humans.
I think that's the perfect conclusion to this amazing adventure.
Such a beautiful journey.
Exactly. From volcanoes to humans.
Amazing. And with the most beautiful view there is.
Absolutely.
The Yvonne crater. Well, guys, it was a pleasure to go on this adventure with you.
It was awesome.
Amazing.
Really awesome.
Yeah.